Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. So today is February 20th, 2025. We're going to talk a little bit about things that can be done to make Cardano post quantum. I know a lot of people are interested in this video. A lot of people want to talk about this. So, as you saw in my prior video, the quantum computer world is heating up quite a bit, and a lot of magical, amazing things are happening. Majorana is a huge step forward, Majorana, with Microsoft, but not far behind it. There are a lot of great companies working on quantum computers, building things in the quantum space. It is my belief that in 5, 10 years, we'll probably make substantial progress to the point where we really have to start thinking about updating, modernizing the cryptography. Now, turns out that it's not just my belief, it's the United States government belief as well. People who are paid to care, the National Institute of Standards of Technology, NIST. What they did is proactively got together and talked to many, many people, including some of our cryptographers, and they created some standards. So this is an article from August 13th, 2024, and it says NIST releases the first three finalized post-quantum encryption standards. And there's Chad. So it's good when you got Chad. How about that? Um, and basically what they did is they wrote some FIPS, and they have FIPS 203, FIPS 204, FIPS 205, and FIPS 206. The Federal Information Processing Standard 203 is about general encryption. There's two signature schemes. One is using the crystals dilithium algorithm, which has been renamed MLDSA, modest module lattice based digital signature algorithm. The other one is actually by Sphinx, which has a long and interesting legacy. If you guys ever use Zcash, Zuko was affiliated with that. And this has actually come from the Algorand community. Algorand is one of the pioneers and leaders in the post quantum standards, and they worked and created something called Falcon, a true lattice based digital signature algorithm. In fact, Algorand wrote this lovely blog post saying, leading on post quantum technology. And they mentioned their work with NIST inside the article. And they also discussed a little bit about some of the things that they've been thinking about and doing. So they have state proofs that are post quantum secure compact certificates, and they kind of developed a bunch of stuff. We worked with the Algorand guys on an extension to Mithril called ALBA, ALBA, and we can certainly follow a similar approach. And then they also talked a little bit about updating the VRF function to be post quantum. But in general, you need to actually model a post quantum adversary. All right, and so they have a pretty sanguine, an interesting, write-up, and so highly recommend it. In fact, I'll give you guys the link to it here, and there you have it. And then you see some really magical schemes are starting to work their way through, in particular, like lattice fold. This is from Dan Boneh and Bin-Yi Chen, and it just came out. It's hot off the press, lattice fold plus. And boy, it is an intellectual tour de force. This is one of the best foldings papers I've ever seen. Math is sharp. There's a lot of really novel and interesting things. Field size is only 64 bits. There's all kinds of goodies here. This is an amazing paper. Long and the short, though, it's a compact folding scheme. So you have basically proof carrying data and you roll up stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present my screen, talk a little bit about what we're going to do in Cardano, what I propose we ought to do. So in Cardano, the challenge that we have is that we use elliptic curve cryptography as kind of the basis of security for most things. So everything involves a signature, and these signatures are on elliptic curve crypto. And the problem is we have this thing called Shor's algorithm. And Shor's algorithm basically, if you have a quantum computer, the quantum computer can kill the security of that. There's some things we can do to harden and evade, but in general, this is an insecure scheme, assuming your adversary has a quantum computer. So, what a lot of people in the blockchain space do is they say, oh, well, what we did is we got a post quantum signature scheme, and thus we're quantum secure. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Just because you've adopted one of those NIST standards or something more exotic doesn't necessarily mean that you're quantum secure. In cryptography, what you do is you invent a concept of an adversary. Okay. And this person, we'll call him Mr. A, what they do is they have a collection of capabilities. And those capabilities are things that you decide up front for your security model and your security proof. So when you say you are secure, what you're doing is you're saying you're secure against an adversary given a set of capabilities. And you say, what type of capabilities? Well, like question of how much compute power. You can ask things like, do they have access to your computer? You can ask, more practical things. For example, online, offline. Okay. And then special capabilities, like they have a quantum computer, for example. But that's not the only thing they could potentially have. So anytime you think about a security model, you have to really think about Mr. A. You have to say, okay, this adversary, what are we going to give him in terms of capabilities? And what does he know in terms of capabilities? So, when we write a cryptographic proof or a security proof, we make a lot of things like Kirchhoff's principle is one, which basically says that the security of the system should rely upon the secrecy of the keys and nothing else. In other words, the algorithms, the adversary is going to be able to backward engineer and understand. So if there's something that keeps it secure through obscurity, it's not considered to be secure. And there's dozens of good design principles that exist, like well over 100 when you talk about information security and these systems. And even if the algorithms are perfect, the algorithms run in hardware, and all the time the hardware lies to you. And these are things called like side channel attacks. A great example is that years ago, a paper came out of Israel. It was a very clever paper where people were using PGP and they broke PGP because what they could do is they could listen to the laptop of somebody in a coffee shop. And as keys were being encrypted and decrypted, they had a microphone, and that microphone could listen to the frequency changes in the computer processor in the laptop and figure out the ones and zeros that were going on there. And it could, over time, through listening through repeated encryptions and decryptions, recover the private key. How about that? Remarkable paper. PGP is secure. It's based on the RSA assumption, but we don't assume that the adversary has this special capability, and we don't assume an environmental particular in the security model. So while it's secure in general, in this particular case, this would defeat the security scheme. So you can defeat things in a classical sense. You can defeat things in electrical engineering sense. You could defeat things with a $5 wrench and beating a person until they give you a key. You could defeat things with special capabilities like quantum computer, for example. It's really remarkable stuff. And I'm really excited, about these things, which is why I study cryptography and I've spent so damn long in this field. And we've written 240 papers as a research group. We're pretty good at it, input output about this. And Agalos is one of the best chief scientists in the world. So kudos to what he's built there and what he has. So really, there has to be a three-step process if you want to make Cardano secure. First, we have to develop a quantum secure model for Cardano, and that's end to end. So we would audit all of the algorithms that Cardano is using and we would ask which ones are vulnerable against a quantum adversary and what capabilities do we have. So we have to kind of define a canonical quantum adversary. And that in itself is an interesting question. And there's various opinions in the cryptographic community about what we should assume there and what they can and can't do. Okay, so that's the first step. Then the second step is you want to separate Cardano into two pieces. There's Cardano blockchain and there's Cardano proof chain. And this is kind of a meta blockchain. This is why I'm bringing up ZK Fold, not ZK Fold, Lattice Fold Plus. All right. So this is the Cardano you know and love. Stuff is happening. Nice little chain of stuff like that. Dot, 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 dot. Great. And it lives in the elliptic curve crypto world. Awesome. Then we have technology like Mithril, very similar to what Algorand is doing with their compact certificates. And what you can do is you can upgrade this to a post-quantum signature system. Okay. And there's many different options that we have there. All right. And then what you could do is you can have this be a companion of Cardano. And basically, it runs as an audit log of history. So you have an unforgeable system that has signatures related to the original history. And effectively, this acts as a checkpoint system. But over time, this can become a programmable proof chain, and then it can be used to prove properties of things from Cardano itself. So, for example, the UTXO state, properties about the dApps, and it functionally becomes kind of a DA layer over time. Now, since this is kind of an emergent construct, there's no reason not to do this with a post quantum. Why we typically try to avoid it from occurring on the main chain at the moment is many of the post quantum signature schemes are 5 to 10 times the size of elliptic curves. And also, they're much, much slower. And they're doubly slower. They're slower because the algorithms themselves are slower, but then they're also slower because there's no hardware optimization at the moment. Your computer processors, whether you have an AMD chip or an Intel chip or an ARM chip or an Apple chip, all of them have specialized circuitry called ASICs inside of the chips that optimize and speed up standardized crypto like AES and hashes and these things. In some cases, 50 to 100 times faster. So when you go from an optimized crypto to a non-standard crypto, not only do you get a slowdown from the algorithm, but then you don't have hardware optimization. Big problem. So they're much, much slower in practice. Well, what does that mean? It means your TPS rate for your blockchain goes down by a factor of 5 to 10. And it means your block sync time goes way, 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 way up. That's one of the reasons why we didn't launch Cardano with one of these primitive schemes. A, because it was a lot slower, and B, it's not standardized yet. And what would happen if Cardano is running a non-standard post-quantum signature scheme? It would mean that the people who adopt the standard ones run 50 to 100 times faster, and we will always have a hardware disadvantage. So we had to wait for NIST to say, yo, dog, we have standards now. And that's why FIPS 203, 204, 205, and 206 are so important. Because now that they're there, hardware manufacturers will start building custom capabilities to speed these types of things up. So the second stage is you just develop this proof chain. And actually, it would be extremely interesting to see if we could develop such a thing with Lattice Fold Plus, because then we'd gain a really powerful folding scheme that's programmable with Cardano, and it adds a lot of value. But a light touch would be just a chain of Mithril certificates that have some finality behind them. and they're signed with a post-quantum scheme, okay? Then the third phase is eventual integration. So, as the PQSS schemes get more advanced, plus we develop a post quantum VRF, the VRF is an essential component for random number generation in the use of proof of stake. When we develop those types of things, plus whatever the quantum adversary requires, then we can put that into the chain and merge the meta chain and the main chain together into kind of one homogeneous structure. So they both run concurrently, and consensus is connected this way. Getting a post quantum mithril certificate, probably the proofs of equivocation and Laos will use mithril. It's pretty trivial for us to update the signature scheme there. So we can begin the post quantum movement a little faster. And there's a ton of optimization that we can do. And we have to make some hard decisions. We have to make a decision whether we want to live in hash land and or do we want to live in lattice land, the land of lattices. It's a magical land with puppies and dragons and unicorns. So these are things like XMSS, Sphinx, Starks, lattices are things like crystals and lattice fold and these types of things. I like lattices a bit more because lattices allow a lot more mathematical complexity. Many professional cryptographers and developers like hashes more because hashes actually are much simpler, much easier to implement, and less things can go wrong. Lattices seem to have a lot more opportunity for programmability, updatability, and conciseness. Hashes tend to be a little larger and they're much more limited in the use and utility. So it's harder to implement stuff like Starks. It's you can do super interesting things with lattice, like what just happened with lattice fold, for example. But kind of the three steps, and there's no way to get around it. Now, in terms of time horizons, what we're going to do is augment our budget request a little bit and ensure that there's sufficient funding to bring some world experts in to augment who we already have so that during 2025 and 2026, the fundamental science of a quantum adversary can be kind of figured out. All right. And the security model in general. In the interim, I do believe that we can pick a NIST standard and we can implement that with Mithril and start working on this proof chain concept. And then what happens is that you have an audit log of Cardano's history as a checkpoint that is quantum resistant. So it means quantum computers can't break that instantly. That's there. And this can be done in the 2 to 3 year horizon quite easily. And there's many ways to accelerate it. And Laos is already pushing that direction. Mithril's evolution is pushing that direction. But then this is useful in its own right because it can act as kind of a DA layer. And you can also use it as a proof layer of the system. So you can prove a lot of great properties. So that's an organic thing that can happen. The merger, probably in this case, it's good to reevaluate more foundational things, including the ledger model itself. Is UTXO still the best accounting system? Or are there different ways to look at it? There's also a concept of intents inside the blockchain space, and there's different ways to look at that. There's actually algebraic representations, algebraic ledgers. Gabby, for example, came up with one that is really interesting. Person, not a project. So there's many different ways you can look at the ledger structure, and then we had this concept that Bruno came up with, chimeric ledgers, where you combine multiple ledger architectures together. Why is this relevant? Because if you're going to foundationally change all of the cryptography inside your system, it's probably good for housekeeping to also look at how you architect the data representations inside the system as well. So, what authenticated data structures do you use? So, an ADS is something like a Merkle tree. You also look at your signature schemes, what private data remains on chain, how data is represented. See a lot of people talk about DAGs, but in general, you can also look at graphs and do you want to actually have a different representation of these types of things? Increasingly relevant when you have intents and you have identity, because that typically is a graph data structure all the way through. A lot of research and thought. So this is 3 years plus. And hopefully in the optimizations, we'll get hardware to optimize that. And hopefully we will also get some more maturity in the standards for that because they're preliminary standards. They just came out. However, the entire US government has to move here. In fact, the NSA already has moved their Suite A protocols to post quantum. So they're doing it because of the archive data attack. How long do we have? That's the big question. One of the things you learn in information security is security is temporal, is always temporal. Always, always, always. And what do I mean by that? Means that things are only secure for a bounded period of time. You say, oh, but Charles, how do you know? Okay, let's say you hire a security guard and he's guarding your bar of gold. Very, very competent and capable security guard. A little tie on, give him a little gun. There we go. Like the world's worst artist, right? Okay, well, here's the problem. Are humans immortal? No. So your guard dies at some point, retires, quits. Not exactly ideal. So between a period of time, perhaps the guard is effective, but perhaps in a different period of time, he's no longer effective. Money ran out, guard died, whatever. Same for algorithms. Compute power and compute techniques are always growing. There is no greater example of that than with the bomb from Bletchley Park, where the Nazis had something called the Enigma machine. And I actually have seen one. I've been trying to buy one, put it in the office. It's so cool. And it was a special crypto machine that they developed, and they believed it was unhackable. In a certain respect, they were right, but they didn't anticipate the creation of a computer. Because if you had to break these things by hand, it was extremely time consuming, extremely expensive, and very difficult. And it required a lot of advanced math. But with a computer, you could run all of that. And the computer could be a special purpose device simply to decode these messages. And that's exactly what Alan Turing did. It was a great story in World War II. Led to the popularization of computers. So this exponentially improved compute power, and it was a new compute technique. There was a lot of amazing things these guys came up with for that. Pretty cool stuff. Awesome. So quantum computers are just another bomb. And the Enigma machine are the classical crypto algorithms that we have today. They work really well, assuming a von Neumann architecture, standard everyday computer. Not so well when you have a quantum computer. It gets the sneak peek that allows it to figure out that private key. Not so good. And that's okay because you can always develop a new Enigma machine. You can have a post quantum signature scheme. What's really cool about cryptography is this concept of cat and mouse. The cat always chases the mouse. So you have your algorithm and your computer, and they're always chasing each other. It's an eternal journey, and they're never going to stop. So that's what's going on here. And with Mariana from Microsoft and all the other cool things, we have a new cat. So we now need a new mouse. So we will get there. Good news is Cardano is very well placed for all of this. We have some of the best cryptographers in the world working at IO and with IO. We're also well positioned. We're at Stanford and CMU and University of Edinburgh and all these other places. So it's not an access or brilliance problem. It's just a prioritization problem. And I get asked about, yeah, every month or two, hey, what are we doing about quantum computers? What are we doing? And then, Willow gets announced, and now Microsoft's topo capacitors get announced. And a lot of people get very excited about these things. And predictably, they say, hey, oh my God, does this mean Cardano's broken and then tomorrow all cryptography is defeated? And the answer is no. But the answer is that something that potentially was 20 or 30 years, we're now starting to believe that we're in a 5 to 10 year horizon for that capability. So the urgency and the roadmap to start thinking around these problems in a more structured way as opposed to an academic way goes up. And the good news is that we don't have to be geniuses. We just have to make some decisions as an ecosystem. What trade offs are we willing to live with? How quickly do we want to integrate things? And how do we integrate things? From the part of input output research, first principles based uh, adversarial modeling and quantum security modeling has to be done. We need kind of a universal composition notion in the world of quantum computers, and this is interdisciplinary. We need to bring in some people and really have some great discussion. Great news is we have people like Alexander Russell in the group, who's a domain expert in this respect. So I think we have the appropriate people. They just have to be incentivized, and we got to get them working a little faster and then working more collaboratively across the industry. So that's a supplemental budget request there. Not a lot, but it's a fundamental thing. And every protocol has to be systematically checked. So we have to update the Ouroboros paper for this type of adversary, for example. The second part, the concept of a proof ledger, there's already several things that are good candidates to start looking at this that rely upon Mithril or a Mithril adjacent. And I think certain projects, potentially like Midgard, for example, could be modified to facilitate this for Cardano. And then that's the very first point where we start introducing post quantum artifacts into Cardano's ecosystem. And that creates a historical stop gap. We have records of account that cannot be tampered with and reversed. So you have a mini blockchain. Then the third step is overhauling and updating the system to merge these concepts together. And it's an opportunity for us to go beyond extended UTXO and capture a lot of the really cool stuff that's going on and potentially use a different mathematical structure than a UTXO graph for Cardano's accounting system. And plus new authenticated data structures. You see Vitalik a lot talking about Merkle Patricia tries and Verkle trees and these types of things. They also added a new hash thing like Penderson hashes, um, Poseidon hashes, excuse me, not Penderson commitments. So they have all these crazy ideas that are floating around inside their ecosystem. So pretty good, but it's an endless game of cat and mouse. Because you know what? The minute you come up with a cool, interesting post quantum scheme, some brilliant bearded MIT information theorist, quantum information theorist will be like, "Gotcha, bitch! That's something." Ha! They'll have a new algorithm for you, and you're like, "Damn it!" And then you have to go and build something new, and that's okay. The modern day public key cryptography has been good to us since 1976. It's very durable, and we've been using it. And elliptic curve cryptography has been very good to us since the 1980s and 1990s. Again, it's been very good to us. So it's pretty nice that it's been so durable. Not many things in technology have lasted as long as that. If you don't believe me, it's like pull out your BlackBerry phone and tell me how awesome that user experience is, or your Nokia chocolate bar, your little candy bar, Nokia feature phone. These things used to be the big hot shit in technology, cost a lot of money, and everybody wanted one. Now they're in landfills or museums. And the fact that the algorithms designed around those time periods are still being used today, it's pretty impressive. They're still relevant today and being built on. It's frustrating because you have to retool a lot of stuff, and a lot of the tools, techniques, and optimizations that we've gotten used to, we can't use anymore. Elliptic curves are one of the most amazing and magical inventions of mathematics. And Neil Koblitz, who's a friend of mine, he's a great guy. He deserves a lot more credit than what he got. Uh, the brilliance of taking something like that and finding this type of use case has created an entire generation, if not 2, of good cryptography. In fact, he wrote a lovely paper called The Serpentine Path of Elliptic Curve Crypto, explaining all the benefits, but also how difficult it was to get it integrated into the broader cryptographic space. And it's kind of sad that now we're moving in a slightly different direction, and now we have different math that we deal with. The good news is there is elegant math, and there are ways to update elliptic curves to be quantum resistant. They're called supersingular isogenies, but super fucking hard and not necessarily secure. We're not sure. It's Zhao's work at Waterloo that's doing that. So we'll see. In any event, Cardano is not caught with its pants down. We're ready for this. We just were waiting for NIST to do its job, and NIST did, and we're proud of them for that. And now we have to have some conversation through the technical steering committee and the product committee. At the IO side, we'll do the foundational research, and we'll also work with some of the specialized companies like Galwa and others who are experts in implementing cryptographic algorithms and talk around which algorithms we need to update, modernize, and clean up. The other thing is if we use any foreign crypto, uh, we will have to audit it. So a lot of these things are we're gonna work real closely with the people who wrote those libraries to do formal security audits on all of these, cryptographic implementations to make sure that they're secure. Because I know every single person who uses Cardano has come to appreciate and sometimes take for granted that we do it right. We use formal methods and, we're rigorous about what we do, and it's unheard of to have these things be hacked. When you change your plumbing, you damn well make sure you have a master plumber because those leaks are expensive to fix, and sometimes you lose the house, and we don't want that to happen. All right, I hope this helps everybody who's been, hearing about it. I know a lot of you asked this question, and please do use this video to, whenever somebody comes up, what's Cardano's post-quantum strategy? And it's going to be a kickoff point for a lot of conversations. They'll be happening at Intersect through the TSC, and they'll also be happening in our research group. And if people are really interested in it, what we will do is do a workshop in University of Edinburgh. And what's cool is people can meet some of the cryptographers. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Cheers.